In 1950, Frank McNamara came up with the idea of a credit card that could be used at multiple locations. Previously, credit cards were available from stores to be used only at that specific store, but McNamara wanted a card that could be used anywhere. Along with Alfred Bloomingdale and Ralph Snyder, McNamara formed the Diners Club, a company that produced credit cards and acted as a middleman between various stores and their customers. Within the first year, they had over 20,000 customers, and the credit card would forever change the way the world shopped, resulting in a massive increase in consumption. In 1950, the United States, along with other members of the United Nations, began sending troops to South Korea to aid the South Koreans in defeating the North Koreans. In all, the United States sent over 300,000 troops, as well as weapons and supplies for South Koreans, resulting in a huge increase in government spending. In 1953, an armistice was signed, ending almost all of the fighting, establishing a demilitarized zone in between South Korea and North Korea, and causing the United Nations to pull out nearly all of their troops. In 1950, as a result of China fighting alongside North Korea in the Korean War, the United States issued a complete trade embargo on China. The embargo was aimed at crippling China's economy and lasted from 1950 to 1969. Although the embargo was aimed at changing China's economy, the United States also lost a fairly large trade partner, so net exports in America decreased.
June 25th, 1951, the first color television show was first aired on CBS. CBS televised the premiere of color television for only an hour. To further promote color television, CBS started the first show to air regularly. This show was called The World Is Yours. Color television was revolutionary. Every American wanted to say that he or she owned a color television. Because of technology, demand increased greatly for color television. The increase in demand caused an increase in real GDP. February 5th, 1954 is the first time that the number of tractors exceeded the number of mules and horses on farms. Because of the tractor's ability to produce goods efficiently and rapidly, the overproduction of farm goods started to occur. This led to a sharp decrease in food prices, which led to higher demand. Because of these low prices, many hardships started to occur in the 20th century for farmers. It was very hard for them to survive. This event was good for consumers, but not good for the suppliers. Disneyland was first built in Anaheim, California, and opened July 17, 1955. Disneyland was a hit. This theme park was dedicated to the ideas of fairy tales and Disney characters. Many consumers or American citizens wanted to go there as trips or vacation. Since Disneyland was such an appealing place to go and spend money, demand increased greatly. Since demand increased, real GDP increased also. Since its opening, 600 million guests have entered the park. As you can see, Disneyland is a very popular place to spend money.
In June of 1956, under President Eisenhower, the United States government passed the Federal Highway Act, which made interstate travel easier and more efficient. This act increased government spending as they built the interstate highways and provided a number of jobs for people that were out of work. This serves as an expansionary policy because their goal to increase government spending on infrastructure caused an increase in aggregate demand. The budget consisted of $25 billion and produced nearly 41,000 miles of interstate highway. This made it one of the largest public work projects in American history at that time. When the Russians launched Sputnik, the first satellite in the history of the Earth, it caused a crisis within the United States of America. This crisis led Congress to passing the National Defense Education Act, which was a 4-year program that poured billions and billions of dollars into the United States education programs. The billions of dollars that were invested into the education programs led to a large increase in the productivity in the United States. The education programs aimed to produce the same or even better technology than Russia did. After pulling the United States out of a recession through an increase of government spending in 1954, Eisenhower proposed the same ideals in his 1958 budget plan. Eisenhower requested a $73.3 billion budget, which was almost a $3 billion increase from the previous year's budget plan. Congress denied his budget request, which basically prevented a future recession from occurring. The planned spending would not have been used to stimulate the economy in any way, which would have created a large budget deficit within the government.
In January of 1959, Alaska is admitted to the United States as the 49th state, followed by Hawaii in August of 1959. Alaska became the largest state in the United States by area. Alaska contains the natural resource of petroleum, which makes it vastly important to the American economy. 80% of Alaska's state revenue comes from petroleum. After oil and gas, Alaska's main export is seafood. Other industrial outputs include coal, zinc, and wood products. In the long run, the products that Alaska provide contribute to U.S. GDP as it becomes part of the country. This will have a positive effect on GDP. Alaska would also account for 20% of domestically produced oil, which benefits the country as we are less dependent on imports from other countries for domestic oil supply.
GDP percent change compared to real personal consumption expenditures percent change is a very important graph to understand. Real personal consumption expenditures percent change directly correlates with the GDP percent change. This graph is clearly coincident. That means that as the real personal consumption expenditures percent change increases, so does the GDP percent change. Consumption expenditures are the largest part of aggregate demand, and that is why it is so closely correlated with real GDP.
The Producer Price Index measures the average change over time in selling prices received by domestic producers for their output. On the graph, real GDP is a leading indicator of the Producer Price Index. This happens because real GDP is an indicator of demand. Therefore, when demand increases, the demand for raw materials that producers must buy to make the products reacts, increasing the Producer Price Index.